So today's topic, we're talking about how to raise your vibration and increase your money frequency. Now, I wasn't super shocked that this was the most voted for topic, mainly because even if you are a person who has been able to create money in the past, if you've created a ton of success, or even if you haven't yet hit the goals that you have in your life, what I find is the topic of money is still pretty taboo, and not many of us know how to, number one, receive it, and also feel good holding it, right? So there are a lot of people who, even though they've maybe hit six figures, seven figures, and even beyond, there's still this lens or perspective of it's not enough. I need to make more. And there's a lot of pressure and angst, and people feel really uncomfortable talking about money. So let's start with why you should listen to me about this topic, because a lot of people have a perspective that, a spiritualist shouldn't be speaking about money. Money is not spiritual. Money is the root of all evil. Money is uh, at the core of all of the greed in the world, and yada, yada, yada. But my perspective on this is that there is nothing more spiritual about how we express in the world the gifts that we bring out into the world and how we let ourselves receive for that. Now, in my own experience, I grew up in small town West Virginia. And for those of you that don't know, West Virginia is typically one of the top states for everything awful, basically. Top in poverty. It's usually one of the worst states for drug use, depression, quality of life. Like, it is a place that, if you are not careful, can keep you very stuck. And while there are aspects of my hometown that I absolutely love, and the people in West Virginia are absolutely incredible, I grew up the daughter of a single teen mom, and she's actually in the chat right now saying hi to everyone. She works on my team. She shows up in great support, and I absolutely adore my mom. But there was no part of me that ever thought I would get to the level that I am now. I always knew that I wanted to get out of the environment that I was in. But I thought, probably like you think or have thought, that, oh, I just need to go to college and get an education, get a good job, get the husband, the kid, the white picket fence, and the little dog spot, right? We somehow think that that is the key. If we just do that, then we will make money and everything in our life will be great. But that's not the case. That's not always the case. So, in my own experience, I went from that background to becoming the first millionaire in my family, and I'm not yet 35. And not to mention that I've also been the spiritual advisor to incredible entertainers, top entrepreneurs, and elite executives in a variety of fields. And this topic of money is very important to, at least from my perspective, how you show up in the world and the impact that you're able to make. Before actually making this this podcast and deciding on what the topic was going to be for today and really tuning into why this matters, I went to Spirit and I asked, like, why is this important for me to talk about? What needs to be understood that isn't commonly understood, at least as of yet? And one of the biggest things that came through was that so many of you, yes, you, have a calling in your life. You have a work to do on this planet. And especially if you are a woman who is called to leadership, that is a very specific path that's going to be opening up more and more, because we're not going to get to a place of harmony on this planet until we have more feminine leadership. Maybe we'll do another episode on why that is. But if you are going to fulfill your calling, you will need resource. You will need resource. You will need to be able to share wealth in such a way that others are able to support you in your calling, because your calling isn't just about you. Yes, you're doing this work that we call euphoric evolution, but it is not just about you. You have to understand that every time you shift your vibration, every time you allow yourself to evolve, it ripples out into humanity, out onto the world, and extends out into the universe, because we are all connected. So let's start with, well, what is your vibration? We talk about this, especially in the in spiritual spaces, in personal development. We talk about being high vibe, and what does that actually mean? Well, first and foremost, we've got to understand that in this universe, everything at its core vibrates on some level. Yes, we have to go very, very deep, but everything vibrates. And ultimately, that's measured by a frequency. Okay. So these two are deeply intertwined and connected. So as human beings, we typically have a very common thread that ultimately creates our vibration. And it usually starts in the mind. So where we have this trigger, we have an experience of reality, and then we have a thought about reality. We think something about what we just experienced. We make story about it. We put a meaning on it. And whatever meaning we put on that thing that we just experienced, an emotion arises from that. Now we have, at least in the West, we have some kind of wonky relationship with emotions, not realizing that our emotions are an energy that is really designed to be temporary. It's a temporary experience of reality. But when we allow ourselves to continue staying in that emotional state, over time, it becomes a mood, right? So if you've ever been in a bad mood, that's a result of you continuing to have certain thoughts that then create certain emotions in your being, ultimately creating a mood. This with like a bad mood or a good mood, but the truth is that there's nuance to that. There's different types of mood. It's not just quote unquote bad or good moods, right? You could be in an angry mood. You could be in a melancholy mood. You could be in, and on and on and on, right? So after a period of time of being in that mood, let's say it's been a few days, it's been a few weeks, that starts to become even more concrete and ultimately starts to become part of your personality, right? So this thought about an experience that you had became a mood, and then ultimately became part of your personality, or what we call your identity, who you believe yourself to be. So whenever I'm talking about identity, what I'm talking about is it's these characteristics that you believe about yourself. So how does this relate to money? Well, let's use an example. We'll go back in history a little bit and talk about a collective phenomenon that many people had, and it resulted in a certain identity of some of us. It's our great grandparents or our grandparents, and then it's been inherited. So some years ago, we had an event called the Great Depression, right? In the early 1900s, we had the Great Depression. And that was an experience in time that people then had certain thoughts about as individuals, but then also as a collective, as a group. There was so much going on, so many people losing their jobs. And people started making story and meaning. Now, this is not to like bypass that experience. That was a very traumatic collective experience. So they had this experience, they start making story about it. And then part of that was like, oh, there's this event happening. We're losing our jobs. Money is tight. There's no money. So we need to be frugal. So there became this mood of frugality that started to happen of like, there's a period of time where this is going to last. We don't know how long this is going to last. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? You've probably seen this pattern happen in your lifetime at least once. So we need to be frugal. We need to be frugal. And then eventually that became part of their personality. So if you've ever said, I'm frugal, that means that you are claiming the identity of I am a frugal person. You're vibrating at the level of frugality. So the next piece that you've got to understand is that much of our reality, I'm not going to say every single aspect of our reality because we are co-creating reality together, but we are making decisions, micro decisions all day, every day that are then creating a certain reality, a certain experience of reality. And our ego loves to reaffirm its identity. So if you believe, if you have taken on the identity that I am frugal, well, you're going to be making frugal ass decisions, right? You're going to be couponing. You're going to be looking for the best deal always. You're never going to buy name brands and so on and so forth. Your decisions are going to reflect your identity. All of our decisions are a result of our identity. So because of those decisions, then you're going to start having experiences in your reality, and you're going to be interpreting them in such a way that tells you, hey, you're a frugal person. And it's also going to reaffirm that that's a good way to be. So I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that being frugal is bad. I'm not saying that overspending is bad. In fact, it just is what it is. Another word for frugal could also be cheap, right? Or I'm low maintenance. That was one of the identities that I had. I'm low maintenance, which for those of you watching the live video podcast, you are probably laughing at that right now. Because can you imagine me? Look at how I am just like put together. Ain't nothing about this low maintenance. I get my eyebrows done. I love me some makeup. My nails done. I'm not low maintenance, at least anymore. I had that identity. So if you perceive yourself as I'm cheap, I'm frugal, I'm a budgeter, and so on and so forth, you are going to create experiences that allow you to continue reaffirming that vibration. Okay? So ultimately, the goal is for you to understand and to embrace that Our reality, everything that we experience in our reality, or at least how we perceive what we experience in our reality. Let me say it that way. How we perceive what we experience in our reality is a direct result of our identity. Now, for a long time in history, psychologists, scientists all thought your personality just is what it is. Once it's made, you can't change it. And that could not be further from the truth. On a collective level, when we experience a trauma, then we create new habits out of it. And over time, those habits start to become part of the culture. We don't even remember why we're doing them. A few generations, it's just part of our culture. We believe that's who we are. But you can absolutely transform your identity. You can absolutely raise your vibration and increase your money frequency. So let's dive into how you actually do that, because you have an inverse relationship. So one of my absolute favorite ways to actually change, to actually transform, without saying that one way of being is better than the other, is evidence gathering. So part of what creates our identity, and therefore ultimately creates a vibration, is this process of evidence gathering that we're doing unconsciously all the time. So if we're holding a certain vibration, we're constantly unconsciously looking for proof that we are that identity, that we are in that vibration. And not just that, but we are also looking for, that it's a good thing, because our ego just loves to be good and right as much as possible all the time. So we can start to actually gather evidence. I have my clients go through a process where they gather 50 to 100 pieces of evidence and write these down, that they or someone that they relate to has the experience of reality that they want, or that they are who we believe ourselves. I don't know if that was proper English, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. So one of the things that I had to look at in order to come out of the belief of like, I am growing up poor, I'm surrounded by poverty, I did not have a lot of evidence in my reality that was possible. So I had to look outside of my immediate environment. You can do this by, following YouTubers that you relate to, or on Instagram, and so on and so forth. And every time you see a piece of evidence that if they can have, or if they can experience a certain type of reality, that you also can. That you also can. Now, I'm also going to add, if you are coming from a background that has been suppressed in some way, shape, or form, this can be more challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but it doesn't have to be easy. You just need for it to be possible, and embrace that it's uncomfortable. And over time, it will get easier. So looking to those examples who are experiencing the reality that you want to experience, and gathering that evidence again and again. This is also a place where your jealousy is a really, really good thing. When you are jealous of someone, and you have to be honest about it, right? Uncovering and figuring out what it is that you are jealous of, you can shift your perspective of that jealousy. Instead of like, oh my gosh, she has it, I'm never going to have it. You can flip that to, actually, if she has it, that's another piece of evidence that I also can experience that. Now, maybe she doesn't have the same challenges as me. Maybe she's like created this and she doesn't have kids, or maybe she's older than me, or maybe she's yada, yada, yada. None of that matters. If you can relate to that person and see yourself in them in some way, you can use that as a piece of evidence. So number one, gathering that evidence can be so helpful. And I'm going to invite you to do that today. The next way that you can actually shift your vibration and increase your money frequency is begin to notice your relationship, your current relationship with money. I tend to find that people who are asking this question or looking at this possibility, they tend to be in one of two camps. One is they are obsessive about their money and what their money is doing. So this is you if you are checking your bank account 50 times a day to make sure that nothing goes through that you didn't plan for. You have a budget that is so meticulous, it's like down to the last penny, right? There's an over obsession, an extreme the word's not coming to me, but you get what I'm saying. You have an extreme obsession with what your money is doing or not doing. On the other extreme is avoidance, right? So that's the hyper perspective. This is the hypo, where you are not even looking at what your money is doing. And ultimately, we want you to come to a place of harmony about money. So begin paying attention to what are the thoughts and emotions that come up anytime you are interacting with money. Are you like clamming up or getting tense whenever you look at your bank account every time? Or are you feeling stressed out every time it's tax season? This is telling you about your relationship or your vibration as it relates to money. So the most healing thing that we can do in order to begin resolving this is to tap into, I know a gazillion people have said this, but it's really true, is gratitude. Yes, it's gratitude. It's gratitude for, even though you may not have billions of dollars, being grateful for what you have been able to experience, what you are currently experiencing, even if there are certain challenges that are popping up, especially as it relates to money right now, being able to find gratitude in some small way. So that can look like the next time the next time you're stopping at Starbucks and you're able to purchase that matcha latte, or you're able to, buy your favorite espresso. Literally taking 5 seconds, before you hand over that card, and just being grateful that you are getting that experience. The ability to pay rent. So many of us look at, oh, I have to pay rent. I have to pay my bills. Well, actually, you don't have to. That's the truth. You don't, there are other options. Yes, homelessness is one of them. It can be an option, right? So being able to tap into gratitude for, I get to pay my rent this month. Maybe not every month. Like, full transparency, there have been months I was not able to pay my rent. And my rent was $500. And that was a stretch. So now when I go to pay my rent, allowing myself to be in gratitude that this is another month I got to have a roof over my head. I get to have another month with this roof over my head. And I'm grateful for that. It's not just saying thank you, but allowing yourself to tap into the vibration of gratitude again and again and again. This is you walking down the street and seeing a penny on the ground and actually picking that penny up and being in gratitude and utilizing that as evidence that money just shows up all the time. So, my next suggestion or tip about how you can increase your vibration and your money frequency is really becoming conscious of how you care for yourself and how you care for those around you. And I personally think that it's the most impactful when you start utilizing this in very small ways. So I have to warn you that most of us have like an all or nothing, do or die approach about everything. And we're like if you've ever done the, oh, I've got a New Year's resolution. This is the year. And then you schedule that you're going to go work out 5 days a week, an hour every day, when literally December 25th, December 26th, December 27th, December 28th, you were just on the couch. So we go from one extreme to another and then wonder why we crash. I talk a lot about 1% aligned action. 1%. It just needs to be 1% more each day. That's it. And over time, that collapses and will build momentum. And before you know it, you'll have a quantum leap. You'll have a brand new experience of reality that you look back and you're like, how did this even happen? Right? So, how you can actually do this is start paying attention to how you allow yourself to feel when you're doing small things for yourself. The smallest things. So it could be something as simple as making yourself a cup of coffee in the morning. Put that cup of coffee on a saucer. Just taking 2 seconds out to put that cup of coffee on a saucer, cup of tea on a saucer, automatically starts elevating the experience. Yes, this is ultimately about self-love and really honoring yourself. So I'm going to invite you to just explore, how can you start to pay close attention to the small things that you're doing and elevate the vibration of how you are experiencing those things. Another one of my favorites is to practice tapping into different energies in the shower. There's something about the water coming out that allows you to tap into different energies. And I play with, okay, what would it look like to take a shower in the frequency of abundance? Well, if I'm taking a shower in the frequency of abundance, I am not scrimping on the amount of soap that I'm putting on my what's the little scrubby thing on my loofah, right? I'm intuiting how much I need to use. I am not measuring of like, oh, exactly a quarter size. How can I take a shower in the frequency of luxury? Well, in that regard, there's certain scents that I like to use. Right now, I'm very into jasmine. For me, that is the frequency of luxury for me. Now, I also don't want to negate that actually learning about money can also shift your vibration about it. So, those are some of the energetic components, but also understand that simply understanding a thing, understanding how something works, can begin to shift your vibration. So, if you never actually really understood how money works or how profit and loss works in a business and so on and so forth, actually taking the time to learn those things and to understand them takes all of the mystery out of it. Maybe not all the mystery, but takes a lot of the mystery out of it and will reduce the amount of stress that you have as it relates to money. So that's going to be my next suggestion to you is listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, actually learning more about how money works, both the tangible and intangible or the spiritual aspects of money. I should also mention off the back of that, there's been a lot of requests for me to bring something forward on the energetics of business. So if you're not following me yet on Instagram, I highly recommend that because I'm bringing through a 90-day accelerator. We don't yet have a name for it, but it's something that it's about the energetics of business. And it will include human design. It will include gene keys. It will also include a little bit about lunar energetics and your own cycles and seasons. So my goal for this is like by the end of that offer, by the end of that experience, you will actually walk away with a roadmap of your unique frequencies that will take you to $1 million and beyond. So stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram at the Royal Shaman to be sure and get that. And for those of you who are royals, don't worry. That is actually included as a client of mine. You're going to get that experience. It's going to be absolutely incredible. I'm so excited. So I wanted to leave a little bit of time, by the way, to answer any questions that you all might have. So what I'm going to do is give you just a few minutes to pop your questions in the chat, and we'll answer some of those right now because, like, how fun is that? And again, I want to say thank you. I know that we've had like at the peak 83 of you here on this Easter Easter Sunday. I'm like, hey, we just do what it do, right? But when the timing is right, the timing is right, and we bring it through. So the energetics of business that will be coming through will not be free for those in the temple. It will be included if you are in Ascension or Synarchy. So Synarchy are our highest level clients at this moment. We've got some incredible conscious change makers in there with incredible followings and teams of their own, just absolute game changers in there. And then Ascension is those who are, really self-actualizing and stepping into their highest potential, moving their way up into Synarchy. So it's going to be included for them. But those of you who are not in ascension and synarchy, don't worry. You will be able to invest in yourself and really master your own energetics. Bring your unique essence out into the world and get paid for being yourself. All right, let's see. How do we choose who to work with? So we don't actually just look at financially where is someone. We are looking for what characteristics, um what level of embodiment is this person showing up in? So we love to have people who highly prioritize. So one of their like top values is their own evolution, because we want to work with people who are really willing and ready to be challenging themselves and therefore challenging one another all the time. We are also looking for people who also are not just uh, completely self centered, right? They want to actually bring some beautiful impact into the world, not just, how can I get $100,000 by tomorrow by doing the most shady thing possible. Consciousness underlies everything that we do. And that's like one of our core principles. All right. So Tracy's asking, what was the main practical experience that I had that allowed me to break with poverty? Oh, I love this question so much. Let me think on that for a second. I would say that actually the most impactful thing for not only myself, but that I've seen even with clients is understanding that environment is about 80% of the battle. Environment is 80% of your transformation. And the reason for that is that our environment is constantly giving us feedback and evidence and experiences that we then shape into who we believe ourselves to be. So, one of the biggest things that I did to shift was actually moving away from my home state. And that's not to say that you have to like get up and move today, but being very mindful about what environment are you putting yourself in. If you can be honest with yourself and you just be honest about the world, there are a lot of people who don't have the capacity and don't have the capabilities, but they're in a certain environment that basically guarantees their success. And then there are lots of people who have incredible capacity, potential, capabilities, who are in an environment where that cannot flourish. So putting yourself in spaces, putting yourself in groups of people, putting yourself in various situations that allow for your identity to evolve is about 80% of the transformation. So I actually moved from West Virginia and moved outside of DC into a pretty wealthy area. If I'm not mistaken, it is the wealthiest county in the United States. And in our apartment complex, I was parked beside a Lamborghini every day, literally every day. And I would see, dog boarding facilities that looked like hotels, right? That were absolutely fabulous. And because of the environment that I was in, conversations around money, seeing wealth, so on and so forth, became normal. And that by itself started to shift my own vibration. So I'm seeing a question, how do we apply for Ascension? I'm going to have someone from my team put in our website. My website is theroyalshaman.com. Apply directly from our website. And we would love to absolutely have you in an incredible transformation this year and beyond. Let's see what other questions we have. So Doreena's asking, when you have no money at all, like literally $7 in my bank account and deadlines coming up and all, and no income, how can we manifest and tap into abundance to attract the money that we need to pay it off? So in this state, what you want to look at is how you can be a creator, where the opportunities are to create. So that can look like listing out your skill sets and your characteristics, and then looking for using Google or Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and looking at what are the opportunities that match my skills, my education, my characteristics. Some of them could be very short term, like quick, but the truth is that money is very easy to make. It really is. It's actually really, really easy to receive it. It's just a matter of, are you able to listen, whether that's actually listening to what people say, or being able to read between the lines of what people are saying, and then simply be able to offer them something in exchange for money that can actually solve that problem, or elevate them to another level, right? Using your skill set. Let's see. What kind of evidence should we be collecting to move away from the penny budgeting experience? With a tight income, these budgets are how I make sure everything is paid on time. So, first and foremost, you do not have to abandon, or nor should you completely abandon having budgets, or um, having an experience of knowing what your money is doing. Being aware of what your money is doing is really important. But what you want to look at is, typically budgeting is coming from a lens of lack, of restriction, of I have to limit my experience of reality to fit with the amount of money that's coming in. Instead of looking at, how can I be a creator and create more money to come in that allows for the lifestyle that I want. So I work with people of a variety of levels. And I will never forget that I've had clients who are making tons of money. I'm talking millions of dollars, who literally will say, I need to 10x what I'm doing in order to have the lifestyle that I want. And mainly that's because they've never put it on paper. What is the lifestyle that you want? So you can go through a practice of, and don't stop doing this. Like, I do this once a year at least. I sit and I look at, what is the lifestyle that I want, that I deeply desire? And how much money does it actually take to live that? Like, what I actually want, not what Instagram has told me that I want, or what I think that I should want because I was educated that that's what I should want, but what actually lights me up. And that's going to be different for everybody. So really looking at that, and then looking at, okay, how can I create? How can I be an active creator in my life and create more abundance that allows for me to have that experience? I feel bad practicing spirituality and wanting money. How do I shift that? So many of us have equated, mainly because of religion, we've equated that to be spiritual means we should not have money, or we should not have wealth. And the truth is that there are certain paths where restriction is an experience that can allow for you to connect with spirit. And simultaneously, my favorite pathways, my favorite pathways have to do with the feminine aspect. Okay. We could say the goddesses, and the goddesses Many of them were associated with abundance and prosperity in lots of different traditions, right? Because in more ancient spiritual systems, there's not a separation between your humanness, right? We want to recognize that you are a human, that you are here to have a beautiful human experience. Yes, you have challenges, and some of you have experienced, maybe you experienced awful trauma. But ultimately, in spirituality, from my perspective, we're not waiting for life to get better after we die. That we actually can be creators and we can create heaven on earth. That there's enough abundance on this planet that we can create a much better experience for people on this planet. But we can't do that until we take care of ourselves first. You cannot be poor enough to save the world. However, if you allow yourself to receive the resources that you need to take care of yourself, to be emotionally filled, to be okay mentally, right? And then utilize the extra resources that you have to share with others. One of my favorite ways is that we take 10% of our profits and we invest them in female entrepreneurs in Africa. Mainly because when we invest in female entrepreneurs, really anywhere in the world, but specifically in impoverished countries, when you invest in a female entrepreneur, she invests in her community. She uplifts others with her. They've got all sorts of amazing stats, and we have some information about that on our website. But she invests in the education of her children. She takes care of the people that work for her. And because of that, multiple families and eventually an entire village can be uplifted when we invest in female entrepreneurs. So I couldn't do that if I just allowed myself to stay in poverty. It is by allowing myself to receive and then allowing the overflow to be shared with others. What could be more spiritual than that? I don't know. To me, that's like, oh, it's Easter Sunday. I'm about to do a Jesus reference. That's like Jesus turning water into wine. Okay? That's what that is, at least from my perspective. I'm going to get called a heretic and a blasphemer. Oh, gosh. So someone's asking about, Estefania is asking about, can those environments be religious? And this is a challenging one for me to share. So let me preface this. I grew up in the church. All right. I grew up in a Christian household. I also spent a few years of my childhood. I have Amish Mennonite family, and I lived in that kind of environment for a few years as a kid. I've also studied lots. I have an obsession about spirituality and lots of different systems. And my goal is never to take someone's religion away from them. I am not anti-religious. In fact, I have worked with and continue to work with people of all religious backgrounds, and some who are atheist even. Because all I need to know is like, what is your language of spirituality? Whether that's science, whether that's logic, whether that's Christianity, whether that's Islam, whatever. I don't care what it is. I will speak to you in your language. But the challenge with this in certain religious spaces is that environments, as like part of their core system, is about martyrdom, and glorifying the one who does without, because he's going to be rewarded in heaven. My perspective is, even in a religious space, my perspective is that God, spirit, consciousness gave us all the power to be a creator in our lives. Every single one of us has the ability and the power to be a powerful creator in our life. We are not here to be victims to Satan, or however you perceive that aspect of reality. None of us are here to be victims. Are you ever going to have an experience where you are on the tail end of some shit? Yes. However, after that moment has passed, after that time has passed, we've got to understand that we always have power somewhere. Power in decision. Power in how we choose to move in our life and what we choose to do with our lives. And I believe that each of us is called in some way to something. And there are many of us right now who are called into roles, called to be, to have, to express an essence, to express certain characteristics that require us to have resources. And when I'm saying resources, money is just one. Money is one resource, one type of resource. Resources can also be, network, other people. It can be opportunities. It can be a platform, and so on and so forth. So to me, you deprive yourself and the world. There's nothing more selfish that you could do than not allow yourself to fulfill your calling because you want to look good not being rich. But if you unconsciously demonize wealth or people who are wealthy, then you will never become one. It's literally impossible. So it's being able to recognize, okay, if you are someone who enjoys going to church regularly, it lifts your spirit, you feel solace. How are you spending the rest of your week? Who are you surrounding yourself with? What YouTube influencers are you watching? What news are you watching? Like, the rest of the week, who are you surrounded by? And what is the influence that that's having on you? You don't have to take in everything from your environment, but recognizing that you are going to be unconsciously influenced by what you absorb. So choose wisely. On that note, I think that's a great place for us to stop. Thank you again for joining us on this very first live episode of Euphoric Evolution. Don't worry, the recording of this will be available here on YouTube. You'll also be able to find this on your favorite podcast platforms. For those of you who were interested in taking the next evolution in your life, if you are ready to fulfill your calling, leave a legacy, and ultimately experience the abundance that is your birthright in this lifetime, feel free to apply at theroyalshaman.com. and follow me over on Instagram at The Royal Shaman. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.